The new girl stood just inside the doorway of the training hall, the smell of sweat, rubber mats, and metal hanging thick in the air. Conversations didn't stop when she entered, but they shifted. Lowered voices, quick glances, smirks that weren't even subtle. She wore the same fatigues as everyone else, but on her frame they looked almost oversized, sleeves pulled down, collar neat, boots laced tight. She didn't swagger. She didn't scan the room like she owned it. She simply walked to the edge of the mat and waited, hands loosely clasped behind her back, eyes calm and unreadable. Fresh transfer, one Marine muttered, loud enough for others to hear. Looks like it, another replied. She lost. A few chuckles rippled through the group. No one corrected them. The instructor entered moments later, barking orders, snapping the room into formation. When he announced close combat evaluation, interest sparked. This was where reputations were made or buried. Pairings were called out, names echoing off the walls. When her name came up, there was a brief pause, followed by a sigh from the Marine assigned to her. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and stepped forward with the relaxed confidence of someone expecting an easy minute. "You good?" he asked her casually, not unkind, but dismissive. She nodded once. Yes, that was all. They stepped onto the mat. The surrounding Marines formed a loose circle, arms crossed, expressions bored, amused, curious, but not concerned. The bell rang softly. The Marine advanced immediately, hands up, weight forward, planning to overwhelm her fast. She didn't retreat. She shifted. Just half a step, subtle enough most of them missed it. His grab closed on empty air. Before confusion could register, her forearm snapped up, striking his elbow joint at an exact angle. His arm buckled. She pivoted, hooked her leg behind his knee, and drove her shoulder into his chest. He hit the mat hard. The sound was wrong. Too loud, too final. Laughter died mid-breath. The Marine lay there for a second, stunned, eyes wide as he tried to suck air back into his lungs. She stepped away immediately, posture neutral, hands down, as if nothing had happened. The instructor raised an eyebrow but said nothing. A beat passed. Then he gestured. Next. The second Marine approached more cautiously, jaw tight, pride pricked. He circled her, watching her feet, trying to read her stance. She mirrored him without copying, always balanced, always just out of reach. He feinted high and rushed low, aiming to take her legs. She dropped her weight, caught his shoulder, and used his momentum against him, spinning him down with a controlled twist. His back slapped the mat. A sharp exhale burst from his chest. Now the room was silent. No jokes, no whispers, just the soft squeak of boots on rubber and the low hum of fluorescent lights. The third Marine stepped forward without waiting to be called, expression hardened. He attacked aggressively, throwing quick strikes, trying to force her onto the defensive. She blocked without strain, movements compact, efficient. When he overcommitted on a punch, she slipped inside, drove an elbow into his ribs, and swept his feet. He crumpled with a grunt, rolling onto his side, coughing. 3 down. Someone shifted uneasily. Someone else straightened, suddenly attentive. The instructor's gaze never left her now. Sweat beaded on a few foreheads, not hers. The fourth Marine hesitated before stepping in. He was bigger, heavier, and he knew it. He tried to use that advantage, pushing, pressing, trying to pin her strength against his mass. She let him. For a second, it looked like she might actually be struggling, until she adjusted her grip, planted her foot, and levered his weight off balance. The takedown was clean, and brutal. He landed flat, staring at the ceiling in shock. She stepped back again, breathing steady, face expressionless. 4 Marines lay on the mat, groaning, stunned, or simply silent. No one laughed now. No one doubted. The instructor finally spoke, his voice low, controlled. Reset. She remained where she was, eyes forward, waiting. The instructor's command echoed through the hall, but no one moved right away. 4 Marines were still on the mat, rolling to their sides, pushing themselves up with strained breaths and bruised pride. The rest stood frozen, eyes fixed on the new girl as if she'd quietly rewritten the rules without asking permission. She hadn't changed her expression. If anything, she looked mildly bored, as though this was taking longer than expected. On your feet, the instructor snapped at the fallen Marines. You're done. They staggered back into the line, avoiding eye contact. One flexed his wrist gingerly. Another pressed a palm to his ribs. No one said a word. The instructor scanned the remaining group, his gaze sharp now, calculating. 4 more, he said. Step up. For a split second, no one volunteered. Then one Marine took a step forward, jaw clenched. He was lean, fast, known for his reflexes. I'll go, he said, voice firm, but there was tension beneath it. 3 others followed, spreading out slightly as they approached the mat. Not officially a group engagement. Just 4 men who understood, instinctively, that one-on-one pride had already failed. The new girl glanced at them, then at the instructor. He met her eyes, searching for hesitation. There was none. The bell rang again. The 5th Marine moved first, darting in with quick footwork, testing distance. She tracked him calmly, turning with minimal movement, never crossing her feet, never rushing. He struck fast. Too fast for most, but she wasn't most. She parried, redirected, and answered with a short, brutal strike to his thigh that dropped him mid-step. He went down hard, shock flashing across his face as pain robbed his leg of function. The 6th Marine came immediately, anger replacing caution. He grabbed for her shoulders, trying to clinch, to control. She let his hands touch her for half a second, just long enough. Then she twisted, slipped under his arms, and wrenched one backward while driving her hip into his center of gravity. There was a sharp gasp as he was forced down, pinned briefly, efficiently, before she released him and stepped away. He stayed down, blinking, trying to process how quickly he'd lost. Now the circle had tightened. The 7th and 8th Marines exchanged a glance. This wasn't training anymore, it was damage control. They moved together, flanking her, trying to split her attention. The room felt heavier, air thick with anticipation. Someone swallowed audibly. The instructor didn't intervene. The 7th rushed her left. The 8th came from the right. She moved forward. It was the last thing either of them expected. She closed the distance with the 7th Marine before he could adjust, slammed her forearm into his chest, and drove him backward into the path of the 8th. They collided awkwardly. She pivoted through them, using the moment of chaos, striking the 8th Marine's knee with a precise kick that folded his leg instantly. He dropped with a shout. The 7th tried to recover, swinging wildly now, technique unraveling under pressure. She caught his arm, stepped inside his reach, and swept him clean off his feet. Both hit the mat. Silence crashed down over the room. 8 Marines lay scattered across the floor, some groaning, some staring up at the ceiling, some just sitting there in stunned disbelief. No one moved to help them. No one laughed. The idea of weakness had evaporated completely, replaced by something heavier. Respect edged with unease. The new girl stood alone at the center of the mat, chest rising evenly, not a single wasted breath. She adjusted her sleeve where it had ridden up, then clasped her hands behind her back again. Only then did she look around, meeting faces that no longer smirked, no longer underestimated. The instructor stepped forward slowly. Up close, he studied her like a puzzle he hadn't known existed. Name, he said. She answered calmly, clearly. A few Marines repeated it under their breath, committing it to memory. The instructor nodded once. Training background. She hesitated. Not out of fear, but consideration. Extensive, she said simply. That earned a few sharp exhalations. Someone almost smiled before stopping themselves. The instructor looked down at the Marines on the floor, then back at her. Medics, he called out. Then, to her, quieter, you could have stopped after the first 4. She met his gaze without arrogance. You told me to reset, she replied. For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Around them, the Marines were getting to their feet slowly, pride bruised but eyes sharper now. They weren't looking at her like the new girl anymore. They were looking at her like a standard. The medics moved in, kneeling beside the fallen Marines, checking joints, testing ribs, murmuring quiet reassurances. The room was no longer tense with mockery or challenge. It hummed with something deeper, a low current of recalibration. Everyone had just watched the hierarchy shift, and no one quite knew where the new girl fit yet, only that she no longer belonged at the bottom. She stood off to the side of the mat now, as instructed, boots shoulder-width apart, hands resting loosely at her sides. Sweat darkened the fabric at her collar, but her breathing remained even. A few Marines stole glances at her when they thought she wasn't looking. She noticed all of them. Awareness clung to her like a second skin. "All right," the instructor said once the medics finished. "Circle up." The Marines obeyed quickly. No one dragged their feet. When they formed the semicircle, there was an unspoken adjustment. Space opened around her without anyone being told to move. She didn't step into it. She simply remained where she was, gaze forward, posture neutral. "You all just learned something," the instructor continued. "Some of you learned it the hard way." His eyes swept over the 8 Marines, who stood straighter despite the soreness. "Skill doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look the way you expect." A few heads dipped. No arguments came. He turned to her. "You want to tell them why you kept your sleeves down?" The question caught the room off guard. A few Marines frowned, confused. She glanced at her forearms, then back up. "Habit," she said at first. The instructor waited. She sighed quietly, then rolled her sleeves up. The scars were old, pale lines crossing muscle and skin. Surgical marks, burn traces, the clean, unmistakable signatures of hard training and harder survival. Not decorative, not for show. The room went utterly still. "Search and recovery," she said evenly. "Close quarter extraction. Places where noise gets people killed." No one spoke. Even the medics paused. One Marine swallowed. Another shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable with every joke he'd almost made earlier. The 8th Marine, the last to fall, looked at her forearms for a long moment, then nodded once, as if something inside him had finally settled. The instructor cleared his throat. "That'll be all for today." No one moved. He raised his voice slightly. "Dismissed." Boots finally shuffled. The formation broke, but not in the usual rush. Marines passed her slowly, deliberately. One stopped in front of her, the same Marine who'd gone down first. His pride was bruised, but his eyes were steady. "Clean work," he said. She met his gaze. "You recovered fast." That earned a short, surprised laugh. He nodded and moved on. Another Marine paused. "You ever teach?" "Sometimes," she replied. "I'd sign up," he said, and meant it. As the room emptied, the instructor approached her again. His tone was different now. Less command, more respect. "You didn't use maximum force," he said quietly. "Even when they rushed you." "I didn't need to," she answered. He studied her for a long second. "We'll be adjusting the program." She inclined her head, acknowledging, not boasting. Outside, the sun cut sharply across the training yard, bright and unforgiving. She stepped into it, blinking once, shoulders relaxing just a fraction now that the noise was behind her. Somewhere inside the building, voices rose, animated now, excited, already retelling what they'd seen. By tomorrow, the story would change. Exaggerate. Grow. 8 Marines would become 10. 45 seconds would become 20. She didn't care. What mattered was simpler. The next time she walked into that room, no one would ask if she was lost. No one would smirk. They'd look at her, measure themselves silently, and listen. She adjusted her sleeves back down, not to hide, but because old habits die hard, and walked on, no longer the new girl. Just one of them.